So thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. So I've been working in information security and technology for about 20 years. By now, I started as sysadmin, and that's relevant for this discussion. The idea is to talk a little bit about culture. And, as a technologist, starting, a security engineer before, and working as a sysadmin, I faced the challenge on leading some period of my time, leading people, leading programs and security initiatives. And we as a security professionals that mainly that started on technical side are kind of brave on how to, develop programs, not have all these concepts in college and the universities, to do so. So we're super focused on technology and this kind of stuff. And one thing that I've learned so far and that could help me a lot before in my career, that was to understand a little bit more about culture and how can we use that as a leverage, and mainly not use that, not make it then to be a barrier to our program, So fortunately, I had the chance to work in different industries that makes me some interesting point of view of, different segments, but also have the fortunate to be in companies that were doing cultural transformations. And that was fun to see. And how can we position ourselves regarding all this kind of change? So it's has some kind of pain on this presentation before. I would love to read it before, so that's my thoughts I would like to share, and hopefully, the ideas can help anyone to prosper in their career and their plans whatsoever. So when you look to the, I don't know if this image here, when I see some people are in the front of the presentation, I guess not. If so, I can remove it. But some concern when we start in a security program, we are so focused on understanding the risks, the gaps that we have, the regulations that we should be compliant, to educate people about risk, your risk perception, the risk appetite that you have, and try to conciliate with their own risk appetite and try to disseminate your understanding about what is risk, your point of views of the gaps that we have, and try to set up, a business plan for security, your strategy plan, your ISMS. And of course, sometimes praying to not be a victim of a cyber incident or a data breach, at least in the beginning, we're understanding and building stuff. But we are pretty much focused on business, on technology, on risk. At least it was like that in my career. So, and we ask ourselves, what is the culture in all this stuff, And what I was seeing in my ecosystem, at least here in Brazil and my own career, it is that the culture is put aside on all these thoughts, on all these perceptions, on all these plans, And the result of that is we can fail, or we could be much more efficient if we can consider that. My perception is that we are living much more a society and companies that much more focus on people, on work-life balance, on culture, and this drive strict concern about how can we better be aligned with this movement on security side of it. And even if you're thinking about in the old, let's say like old-fashioned style companies, from the kind of template and the full culture of being bureaucratic, if the meritocracy, of hierarchical thoughts and behaviors. Even that companies, I don't think that we have much more companies like that. We are transforming because of the digital economy. But even that company, Peter Drucker, said before that, strategy are being eaten by the culture, So how can we leverage that in our own sake, for the sake of security, right? So one thing that I've learned, and just give an example of one of the experience that I had in the past, I was at a relevant company here in Brazil. We are going to develop a security program, but I was the seventh person in charge of security, the seventh person as a CISO for the last 5 years, something like that. And the challenge was no one stopping in the chair in the role because many things, but I pretty much didn't made anything different from then, but one thing changed. People who hired me, they kind of gave me a blank letter to say, hey, you can you should accomplish, we cannot fail anymore. You have a lot of depth from the past and you can do whatever you want the way you want it. And we try to do that, and many times clashing the culture. And the problem is sometimes we know that some behavior we are clashing that, but the majority of time I didn't know. It was like I was no totally in the dark regarding that. So uh, besides that, I started with the same mistakes that my colleagues did in the past. So clashing the culture, but I have in my favor this kind of blank letter. And the main favor that was I was defending the main value that organization have. That I will not share which one it is because I don't like to share which company it is. But I was defending that. So their mindset was, hey, he is struggling, fighting everyone and doing all these mistakes and going against our culture in all these aspects. But he's defending the main value of our culture. So let's accept that while he's, delivering things and helping, So I did, my team, we did things in 6 months, more than my colleagues from the last 5 years. But I was clashing that without knowing. And the moment that I crossed the line, like we did it a lot, but this support behavior of you are doing, this blank letter don't have anymore. This is a non-speak rule. It's an informal rule. It's an informal agreement, not formally, So it's part of the culture. And there's, hey, I understood that right now I didn't have this blank letter anymore. So I had to change the thing. But at that time, there's another history. I was exhausted. So the point is, I could be much more efficient in the deployment of the program if I have do all the aspects or the majority of aspects right, because I confronted the way of the company speaks, I go in another direction. The company decide in one way, I decide in another direction. The company going decide or define things and execute things in one way, I did in another direction, because all these things in my way of thinking would be much more a way to break and run over, the things that we should do. So that made, besides all, we succeed, we make a lot of things, but after some period of time, I was excited, decided to move on and try to start from scratch another way, this lesson learned that I'm sharing right now. So pretty much cultural definition, we have two expert definitions here, but at the end of the day, the popular saying it is it is the way that we get things done. Okay, so when we are doing your own way, a security person or a privacy or a risk management person, professional, no, you are doing your own way. So and if it is different from their way, we are perceived as someone that's is not working here. You're not part of the family. You're not part of the group. You're not part of the company. So how can we leverage that to help your program? So again, just a disclaimer here, I'm not expert on, I'm not an HR expert or organizational culture expert, but I've been using these two frameworks to help myself understand the company culture on my side and how can I leverage that Very basic, you have like the Spencer Stewart, that's Harvard Business Review article. They have two axles that talks about how people interact between themselves, less dependent on another or more dependent, how they were able to change, more flexible to change, or more maintainers of the status quo, and the ability and flexibility axle, and that changed the different kind of organizations. You know, when you talk about even startups or digital companies, I think that they behave like the same, right? They are agile, they are non-hierarchical. No, they have a lot of nuances. So there are specifics on that need to understand. In the Erin Meyer, book, The Culture Map, she's the co-author of the Netflix culture book. I don't remember exactly the name of the book, but she presented a great study here on 80 pillars on defining how people lead, if they are egalitarian or hierarchical, how they persuade themselves, how they relate to each other, if they are more confrontational or not, if they trust on relationship or on tasks being done together to create this relationship, this kind of trust. And what I've proposed here is pretty much just for closing, it's pretty much a common sense of deploying stuff on understanding, to map the environment, to define your vision, to execute a strategy. I had the chance in the last 10 years to, I don't know how, but we deployed the idea of bringing people from different departments to lead security projects, like people from marketing, operational technology, risk, compliance, legal, business, marketing, whoever. But to lead, the security program that we have. Just to close out, and that helped me, to get more voice, speaking the culture of security that would like to influence the company. Much more important, that's not your way or the security way or tool way to deploy in the security program and the initiatives that we have. We have another thoughts of feelings, perceptions, thoughts on board of that represents the way that the company does their work, how they operate, and not your way. So it's a fraction of the company, and they are disseminating them. And something that I learned from my coach on the psychology side, it is make them taste the wine, not just swallow, and then I'm not concerned about deadlines of to finish that one month and 1 year. Of course, that we have some things that should deploy very quickly, but at least people are doing their jobs, leading that and trying that, tasting them, living this kind of security concept in their lives. And just to finish, some recommended reads for this kind of stuff. The last one that I didn't mention in the last slides is Frederic Laloux. It's a Raven organization. They speak about the evolving of organizational culture in the society and inside their organizations. That's pretty much relevant, and even ideas can bring to this table. And please, if you have some ideas to share, please reach them now. Let's take a virtual coffee and talk a little bit about. Thank you for coming. It was a pleasure, and hopefully it will help you ladies and gentlemen to prosper in your plans, careers, and so far.
Thank you very much, Marco. It's Marco Tullio. I think it was very interesting, and very interesting to see there were two slides that particularly resonated with me. One of them is the 5 things that you shouldn't do in order to try to change culture. And I'm sure that many of us have made the mistake of trying to adopt at least one of those 5 approaches. And then also the iceberg, because it is true that you really need to understand what is going on and how people interact within an organization or within a company, because it's only by winning hearts and minds, I think, that you really go forward. So thank you for a very interesting speech. I'm not going to ask for questions, because I think that the panel that we're going to have now actually very much leads on from what you've presented, because the panel is going to be the cybersecurity culture in companies. So I think what you've said is a very good base for that.